Hello and welcome back to another episode of the For the Property Investor podcast. And we're here with, of course, the weekly news because we have Nick Bendel with us, who's the only man who can bring us the news. So welcome, Nick.
It is great to be here, Owen. Thank you.
My pleasure, really. And the listeners' pleasure because without you, it'd just be me carrying on like, a chook. Usually,
So that sounds entertaining. Sign me up.
Yeah, well, some people don't find it, and actually, most people don't find it entertaining. So you're a special person, Nick.
Well, thank you. I get told that a lot.
And what's been happening in your week for the past week, Nick?
I was about to say I was very busy, but I no longer say I'm busy. I was very productive. It was a very productive week for my business, Hunter and Scribe. For those who don't know, Hunter and Scribe is a copywriting agency. We write content for property and finance professionals throughout Australia. We work with a lot of brokers and non-bank lenders. And we recently got a lovely 5-star Google review. Working with Hunter and Scribe is an absolute pleasure. They're experts in writing about mortgage broking and lending. They're also ultra reliable and very friendly. Business becomes a lot easier when you have dependable partners.
Very good, very good. Well, here at Leafield, we've been very productive as well. Unfortunately, had a few staff members off sick, so that made us even more productive. But it looks like everyone's bright and shining on a Monday morning here now. So looking forward to even a more productive week this week. But I also was meeting up with a few networking opportunities this past week with some industry colleagues. So one of which will likely be a guest on the expert series of the podcast coming soon. So look out for that. We'll be relaunching that soon with some special guests coming on to have a chat. But Nick, I think it's that time. What's in the news?
Oh, there is so much in the news, Owen. It has been hard to filter it down to 3 stories, but I have managed. Our first story today is RBA tipped to make series of rate cuts. NAB has forecast that the cash rate will fall from its current level of 4.1% to 2.6% by February next year. NAB expects the RBA will cut the cash rate at 5 of the next 7 monetary policy meetings. So NAB thinks the RBA will cut by 50 basis points in May, 25 in July, 25 in August, 25 in November, and then 25 in February. Headwinds from the global environment have intensified, but error bounds around our forecasts are large given uncertainty remains exceptionally elevated, NAB Chief Economist Sally Auld said. Our call for a 50 basis point easing in May reflects the fact that with the real cash rate of 1.3% and policy currently restrictive, the RBA needs to play catch up. Once the cash rate reaches a level more consistent with a neutral policy setting, we then expect the RBA to pause for a few months before taking the cash rate into modestly accommodative territory. Very interesting, Owen. Do you expect the RBA to cut rates at its next monetary policy meeting on May the 20th?
Well, that'll certainly be after the federal election. So there's a good chance that they'll actually make a decision. If it was before then yes, I would doubt they would actually make a decision. And in terms of cutting by 50 points, it's a big call. I mean, I know the RBA was reacting to a lot of the tariff announcements from the US and what that was going to have on a global impact. But it depends on which day of the week they announced this or talking about it, because it could have been the very next day. It's like, oh, the tariffs are off. Well, at least postponed for another 90 days. So does that mean the rate cuts are going to be postponed for 90 days as well? Who knows? We're living in interesting times. We're
Mm.
really not sure what's going to happen because yeah, the man in the Oval Office has to make up his mind.
And then not change it 8 minutes later.
Yes, yes. So, it's apparently the Chinese tariffs are going to have some exclusions now on electronic goods. Yeah, maybe all those Apple shareholders were a bit concerned that they uh, wouldn't make as much money, and uh, maybe some family members of that man in the Oval Office said, "Hey, my iPhone's going to cost twice as much now."
Well, in the 2 minutes that we've been talking about it, Trump has probably changed his policy 4 times. So it's hard to know what's going on. But yes, I see your point. There is a lot of uncertainty and instability at the moment. I guess that will be on the RBA's mind when they meet in a few weeks' time. Another interesting point from NAB is they're saying the greater risk is no longer too much demand in the economy, but too little. Is NAB right?
In the talking just about the property market, um, we're not seeing that much of a slow up in demand as yet. Um, Apart from the usual slow up in demand as a result of a federal election, which for some people, for some reason, a lot of people decide to put off making decisions until after the election. But in terms of the overall economy, yeah, there's we haven't seen any slow up in demand as a result of tariffs or the possibility of tariffs being imposed on us or anyone else around the world.
NAB expects interest rates to fall by 1.5 percentage points in the next 10 months, Owen. You mentioned the property market a moment ago. If rates do fall that much that quickly, what would that mean for the property market?
Oh, it'll certainly provide a boost and make it easier for people to be able to borrow or borrow more. And yes, that'll fuel more demand. When Which could be a concern because when we've got um, a property market that is already undersupplied, um, putting more demand into the market, could fuel prices even further. Which in some respects we need some targeted um, raising of prices, especially in the unit and apartment sector. But of course, we can't restrict growth to just one part, one type of asset class within the sector.
Well, that's interest rates covered. That's our first story. There is an election campaign going on. I don't know if you've noticed. That's going to
Oh,
be
really? No?
there is indeed. That's going to be the focus of our second story. Greens call for property investors to fund solar expansion. The Greens have proposed a plan that would allow renters to demand that landlords install an average size solar panel system at the home. Landlords could refuse only on what the Greens call reasonable grounds, including restricted body corporate rules, engineering challenges, or local energy congestion constraints. Landlords would have to pay for the solar system and installation, either during their period of ownership or automatically once the property was sold. If landlords chose the latter option, they would also have to pay interest. Greens leader Adam Bandt said, "Renters need solar. Getting solar on your rental property will help lower your power bill while also lowering emissions. It's good for renters, good for the environment. There are 7 million renters in Australia, and they deserve to be able to cut their power bills and reduce their emissions just like homeowners can." Owen, what do you think of this policy?
Um, when I read this, it's just like, wow, it's out of the hundreds and hundreds of policies and ideas that the Greens come up with, this one's actually got some legs. It's um, uh, when it comes to, I mean, it makes sense. And I don't know why they're just targeting property investors. Why can't all property owners have to put solar on? I mean, think of it. It would automatically, you've got those assets and that with in terms of a roof, um, it's not going anywhere. You don't have to lay out a lot of capital cost for infrastructure to be able to do it like you do with electric cars, where you need chargers and all those types of things. Um, and that way, if you've at least got solar on your roof, you're using solar to, if you do have an electric car, to charge your electric car. Instead of using coal or gas to fuel the electricity that's going to charge your electric car. So it makes a lot more sense to have that and on your roof in terms of solar with a battery pack. I mean, there's no point having solar just going into the electricity grid and not being able to charge it for your own use. So I think they should go even further and say, well, you can't own an electric car unless you um, have solar on your roof.
So you're saying the Greens aren't extreme enough for your liking?
In this respect, because when you think of it, if you own an electric car and you don't have, and you're charging it with, power from the grid, then you're actually putting um, more demand on power from the grid, which is burning more coal, burning more gas. So let's focus on and then if you're out and about, you need more charging stations. So there's extra costs, extra infrastructure costs. So if you're really into having an electric car, then let's make sure that you're using as little fossil fuels as possible to charge the thing. So let's put solar on your roof with a battery pack to be able to charge it if you're not using it, because um, when you're going to have peak electricity from your solar during the middle of the day, when are most people out? They're out during the middle of the day. So you need to charge your battery so you can use your battery overnight in the house to be able to lower those electricity costs. And that's the easiest and best way to take load off the system for out of the power grid. So that, yes, we don't need to necessarily build as many um, coal or gas or even nuclear power stations in the future. And and it's and so if every house can become self-sufficient, every household can become more self-sufficient, then we don't necessarily need to build all of these solar farms or wind farms either. So it's it's the low-hanging fruit.
Okay.
So
Well,
in terms of the Greens policy, why pick on property investors only? Why can't all property owners um, be subject to have to do this? And 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 then make it that you can only own an electric car if you have solar at home with a battery.
okay. Very interesting. I haven't heard that proposal before. That is an interesting one. Um, so the Greens have proposed this national rental rule, which raises an interesting philosophical idea. Our rental legislation is generally state-based. What do you think
Mm.
about the idea of renters all over the country being subjected to the same legislation? Do you think that would be a good idea?
In essence, it wouldn't be a bad idea. There's always local issues, but it's that's where some local governments impose restrictions on the use of housing in some areas. But whether it's a state-based legislation for residential tenancies acts or federal, I don't think it would make much of a difference. But that involves a lot of toing and froing between states and federal governments to be able to standardize legislation across the country. So, yeah, it's it takes a long time.
Okay, well, I know the Greens have got your vote, but I want you to remain open-minded for our
I
next
wouldn't go
story.
that far.
So our next story, our final story today, is ALP expands first home buyer support. Labor has promised to allow all first home buyers to purchase a property with a 5% deposit without paying LMI. The government currently has two similar schemes, the First Home Guarantee and Regional First Home Buyer Guarantee, which collectively support 45,000 first home buyers per year, or about 1/3 of the number of people who buy their first home each year. Anthony Albanese said, Labor will enable every Australian to buy their first home with a 5% deposit. There will be higher property price limits and no caps on places or income in a major expansion of the existing scheme. Also, Labor has promised to work with developers to facilitate the building of 100,000 homes per year that would be reserved for sale only to first home buyers. So, Owen, what do you think of Labor's plan to allow all first home buyers to enter the market with a 5% deposit without having to pay LMI?
Yeah, that's nice. It's I mean, I don't think it's really that much of a extra step from what they're already doing. Those first home buyers still have to qualify for the finance, um, even if the government is guaranteeing the 15%, so they don't have to pay lenders' mortgage insurance. They still have to qualify for the bank's lending policies to be able to borrow the money. And they need to, there's still price restrictions on that, I believe. So they would need to find a property where they want to live for that price. And so there's still a lot of uh, issues that a lot of first home buyers would have with trying to find that property to buy. I mean, if they're going that far, why restrict it to only first home buyers? And what's the qualification of first home buyers? What if someone's owned a property in the past, but due to personal circumstances, they had to sell the property, whether it be sickness, loss of job, or divorce, which are the three main things that set people back financially. If they haven't been able to get into the property market for say 10 plus years, would that requalify them as a first home buyer? Because they're facing the same issues as first home buyers to get back into the market. So, it's why not take that further and allow those people to be able to get back into the market as well.
I guess this comes back to the issue that we talk about all the time, which is there's a policy to help first home buyers because there's affordability concerns. If there are affordability concerns in any market, whether it's property or anything else, it's because supply is too low and demand is too high. And then the government comes along with a policy which is just going to increase demand without increasing supply. So it seems like this would be a band-aid solution.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, you're just fueling more demand into the market, especially at those lower price points. And you can see the price disparity for because there's a lot more demand up to those first home buyer caps. What you get for um, uh, if there's a cap of, say, let's call it $1 million on a first home buyer property, then what you get for $1 million isn't half of sorry, by spending $2 million, twice as much, you don't get twice the house. You actually get 3 or 4 times the house. And so that just shows you that that extra demand up to that ceiling is just pushed so far and so quickly that yes, all it does is raise that those prices up to that ceiling very quickly.
Okay, then what do you think about Labor's plan to facilitate the building of 100,000 homes per year solely for first home buyers?
Yeah, well, that's where they're trying to offset that. And it's offset that extra demand by pumping more supply in there that's just for first home buyers. But again, the issue is, how do they, I mean, just like they promised to build, what was it, 1.2
1.2.
million houses or dwellings in 5 years. How do they ensure that, and how do they tell builders to where to build and only sell them to first home buyers? Builders and developers are having enough issues now of the cost of goods to be able to, and materials to be able to build property, as well as the increased cost of labour to be able to build these properties. So how are they going to go if they're restricted to specific areas, to specific price points? And how are you going to get first home buyers to actually want to buy these properties that are built in these areas, and these types of properties that are just for first home buyers? You're going to end up with lending restrictions as a result, because lenders going to look at it as being just for first home buyer market. And what if the property needs to be resold? Can they be sold to anyone or just to another first home buyer? It's like a lot of these knee-jerk reactions that the Labor governments do make. They don't think of second and third level consequences. And yes, they mean well. And yes, on the surface level, it sounds like a good policy. But you look at the second and third level consequences, and it just starts to all unravel and fall apart.
You say they mean well. Let me kind of ask you a follow-up question on that. During the election campaign, Labor and the coalition have been saying a lot of nice things about affordability, but how serious do you think they are about solving the problem?
Well, they're probably wanting to solve the problem, but wanting to solve the problem properly doesn't win them an election. So, and that's where we need to look at what has the current Labor government done in the last 3 years to be able to fix those underlying issues, when they had a real chance to, and they haven't done anything. In fact, they've fueled demand to a point where it's just driven up prices. They haven't done anything to be able to, with that increase in demand with the immigration, to be able to solve some of the solutions with bringing in skilled trades, and focusing on skilled trades to be able to come in to help solve that problem. So if anything, they've made it worse in the last 3 years. And it's not saying that necessarily the other side have proposed anything to really fix the wholesale issue, the underlying issues dramatically, because they want to win an election too. And but looking at what they have done in the last 3 years, are they really going to do anything differently for the next 3 years?
Okay, now speaking of the election, just to round things out, I'm going to throw the questions at you that I'm going to ask throughout the election campaign. What will be the result of the election, Owen? Who's going to be PM? You can't say Clive Palmer. And will the next PM be leading a majority or minority government?
It's looking more and more likely that that the Albanese government will retain power, and probably a good chance that that'll be a minority government. So it's which will be sad because they'll then be able to get even less done.
Well, I had been saying minority Liberal government. I'm now switching to minority Labor government. It's interesting since our good friend Donald Trump has been doing all his interesting things over the past few weeks. It's led to a rise in support for incumbents in many countries. It's happened in Canada. The Liberals were just disastrously unpopular and they've had a surge in support. It's happened in Britain. Labour and Starmer have become a lot more popular. And it's happened in France. Macron's become more popular. And I think it's happening here in Australia too. I think this has been beneficial for Albanese. So I'm switching from a minority Liberal government to a minority Labor government.
Yeah. So we'll what have we got? What have we got? About 3 weeks to go. That's a long time in politics, so you never know. Anything can happen.
Anything can happen, but what would be interesting if it was a minority Labor government, suddenly those Greens housing policies come into play because the Greens may make one of their policies a condition of forming an agreement with Labor.
Yes, which for most of the policies that attack property owners and property investors, it'll be disastrous for the rental market and for renters. It'd really be sad to see that, and you'll see a lot of investors just say it's all too hard. They'll bow out.
Well, looking forward to chatting to you next week. Probably in the next 7 days, there'll be 43 different tariff announcements. I wait to see what's going to happen. It's been a big week, and I have a feeling the next week is going to be just as big.
All right. Thank you, Nick. And again, we'll see you next week with the weekly news, only brought to us by You're the Man, Nick Bendel.